Okie dokie, kiddos, let's talk about houses 5 through 8. Welcome to Juno B. My name's Becca, and I'm an Aries Sun, Scorpio Rising, Gemini Moon, and today we're talking about houses 5 through 8. If you missed last week's video, definitely go watch that one and then come back to this one because I talk about angular houses, succedent houses, and cadent houses, which is kind of important. I'm probably not even going to reference it if I'm being honest, but it's good to know, so go watch that one and then watch this one. So as you see, I kept all of our little drawings and illustrations from last week. So far we have Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer. So we are going to do the next 4. So the 5th house is the house of children, creativity, and play. And it is naturally ruled by Leo, which kind of looks like a little sperm, but you didn't hear it from me. Since the 5th house is so complex, it's the house of creation, creativity, play, children, romantic relationships. It's important to look at what planets are in this house and also what rules this house to sort of understand what parts of the 5th house actually pertain to this birth chart that you're reading. For instance, if another fire sign is ruling this house, I could probably say that this person is very creative, that they like to express themselves through art and creativity. If an air sign rules this house, it's probably talking about a person who is very creative in their ideas, but might need help to get those ideas onto paper. And also paying attention to what planets are in this house. If someone's sun is in this house, they are probably immensely creative because the sun is the true ruler of Leo. It is hard to just go through absolutely every possibility of this house, so definitely take a look at your own charts, leave some comments down below letting me know what you've sort of discovered from your 5th house, and I'd love to hear about it. As for the children aspect of it, it's not necessarily your children, but it's your relationship to children. So if there is, Leo that rules this 5th house, you're probably a child at heart, not necessarily saying like you need to have children or that you will have children at some point in your life. It's not necessarily about that. So since Leo is the true ruler of the 5th house, which is the house of creation, creativity, play, children, and romantic interests, what picture should we draw for it? Let's draw a music note. Sure. Even though Taurus is technically like the singer of the bunch, but whatever. Moving on to the 6th house, which is the house of health, work, and service. The true ruler of this house is Virgo. I'm really bad at drawing Virgo, so bear with me. It's like an M with like a thing through it. Yeah, sure. This is sort of not related to what the 6th house means, but I did just want to mention. So look at how small this house is in this fake chart that I drew. That actually does tell you a lot about how this person's relationship with this house affects them overall. If they have a smaller house, this area of their life isn't as important as if there's a huge, 8th house, for example. So just taking account of that and just seeing the overall size of a certain house can tell you a little bit about what these people care about. I know the 6th house very well because that's where my south node is. We're going to talk about nodes in another video. They are literally my favorite thing. So when talking about work as it relates to the 6th house, try to stay away from thinking about it as career. Work and service implies serving other people. So social activism can come into play in this house, but not necessarily what your job is, because that's the 10th house, which we'll get to next week. If there's a cusp on this house, which means, let's say that the true ruler of this house is Leo, and then like half of the house is ruled by Virgo, that can tell you how you relate to work and how you relate to your co-workers. Because in this house, it's all about other people. It's not necessarily about yourself, except for when we're talking about health. Seeing what sign rules this house in your chart can tell you a lot about your relationship to servitude and also your ability to take care of yourself. That's where the health part comes in. For instance, if Aries rules this house, you probably take great initiative in making sure you're taking care of your body. If a water sign rules this house, you might be an emotional eater. So since Virgo is the true ruler of the 6th house, which is the house of health, work, and service, let's draw a little vegetable, maybe a carrot. Let's tried to draw a little carrot. I guess it's more of a radish. Or a turnip? Maybe that's a turnip. Moving on to the 7th house, which is the house of unity and marriage, and the true ruler of this house is Libra. So when I say the house of unity and marriage, I mean any partnerships. So this could be the house of a best friend, it could be the house of a roommate, it could be the house of any legal binding agreements, and it can also be the house of enemies. Anything that sort of binds you to another human being is what this house is about. So if Mars is in this house, that can probably be an indicator of having someone that you really don't like, or having an enemy in life. If Venus rules this house, it can probably show that you jump from person to person often, and you tend to fall very quickly. Finding what sign rules this house can tell you how you go about making those partnerships. So if a fire sign rules this house, you probably make those partnerships very passionately, very sporadically. If an air sign rules this house, you probably think about these things very deeply before taking any action. If an earth sign rules this house, you probably see the black and white text of just being like, this person is showing me this, I am going to receive this, and then this will happen. If a water sign rules this house, you probably make partnerships very emotionally, you probably lead with your heart in these situations, but it really depends on what's happening in your chart. So since this is the house of marriage and unity, I'll draw 2 rings, because that's nice and easy. Or so she thought. And finishing off today's video, let's talk about the 8th house, which is another very complicated house. This is the house of death, sex, and regeneration, and it is naturally ruled by Scorpio. I once heard that the 8th house is what makes us insecure, and I also think that it shows us how we deal with our insecurities. So this is the point in our lives when we start realizing that everything isn't peachy keen, and that we can be affected by words, by actions, and by these greater ideas in life, like death, like sex, like regeneration. Having these bigger questions, but not yet asking them, and just being affected by them. Because these are the larger questions in life, if there's a water sign that rules this house, such as Scorpio, it can be an indicator of deep intuition and psychic ability. I always try to be very careful when I talk about like psychic tendencies and things like that, because I do like to see a birth chart just as what the reading is before me, and rather than talking about psychic ability and things like that, not that there's anything wrong with those things, but I like to sort of try and look at this logistically. So rather than saying psychic ability, I choose to say intuition. I think that psychic ability is a bit more divisive, and I want to try and prove that anyone can read a birth chart and you can learn a lot about yourself by just seeing what's on the page. So if a water sign does rule this house, that can be an indicator of deep intuition, because again, you're not asking the questions yet, you're just realizing them. If an air sign rules this house, these are probably things that tend to take over you a bit. And the reason why I say that is because water mixed with air tends to cause waves, right? Or like a tsunami of some sort. So having these things really take over your mind can be very hard to combat, but it's not always a bad thing, because these things are questions that will come up in life, because where there's life, there is death. And having these thoughts of, do we regenerate? What happens when we die? This is all what happens in the 8th house. This is also the house of risks. If your North Node is here, that can be a large indicator that you should be taking more risks out of life. So since Scorpio is the ruler of the 8th house, which is the house of death, sex, and regeneration, let's just do this. Close enough. Okay, and that is the end of houses 5 through 8. If you guys are reading your birth charts along with these videos, please make sure to leave me some comments and tell me what you're inferring about yourself through this, and if these things that I'm saying resonate with you, and what rules these houses and what's in these houses. I want this to continue to be a conversation. And always, 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 if you have any questions, direct message me. We don't have like a huge following right now, so I am able to respond to every single message that I get, and I am able to help you guys out with reading your own birth charts, because that's the position that we're in, which is actually really beneficial for all of us. That's it for today's video. I post every Tuesday, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!